recording. So welcome again to stop 2 of the virtual book tour for Thrive Through It. Really excited that you are here. Okay, I see you all's words flowing in the chat already. Tired and relieved. Definitely can relate to that. And yeah, feel free to drop how you're feeling in the chat. No judgment, nothing to qualify, just in 2 words, how are you feeling today in this moment? Would love for you to share that. I'm definitely feeling tired and hopeful. Tired and hopeful would be my 2 words, and looking forward to this conversation. So Janice, I think I just promoted you to panelist. So I hope that worked. Okay, I see hopeful, I see relieved. Keep going. Ashley said, love the convo. I've been reminding myself that the rest stops make the journey. Yes, we talked about that last week, and that's so true. So true. Hi. So I'm thrilled. We're changing things up, and we're going to be changing things up like this for each of our sessions. And so we're going to kick off today with a conversation with our special guest. I'm so thrilled, like super excited. And I have to say, Janice, before I intro you and then let you share about yourself, I've been over here getting my whole life on the conversation that you and Brittany had, which I feel like is like, I'm gonna drop that replay for everybody. So just know, like, you'll get a chance to continue this conversation with Janice after today. There's a brilliant sister, Brittany. I'm working on that myself. And having a similar conversation. So I'm excited to welcome Dr. Janice Gassam Asare. Just love her work. I'll say this is our first time. So just so if you're watching this live or on the replay, just to contextualize this conversation, this is our first time having like a live conversation. So I feel like I know her through social media, but in fact, this is our first time like talking live. So I'm excited to welcome her. She is the best-selling author of, hold on, let me do this all the way right. So best-selling author of Dirty Diversity, and actually a book that I was referencing for a client earlier, so it's on my desk, as well as The Pink Elephant. So let me tell you, if you are in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or you are in your company in an ERG and your organization has made commitments and they're looking to figure out what's next is everyone in that company needs these 2 books. They are quick reads, but power packed. And so, Janice, welcome. I'm so glad to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's so amazing to meet you for the first time. And I have to first ask, is it Brittany or Brittany?
So listen, I was born Brittany. So as Brittany was saying earlier, but like no one said, like literally my parents, so my mom has passed, but my dad says Brittany. I have godparents that say Brittany, and everyone else, including myself, I'm like, you know what? It's Brittany. It's Brittany. I say Brittany. It's Brittany. It's fine. So I truly was convicted when Brittany shared, like, her mom was like, no, I named you Brittany. There are 2 T's. It's 3 syllables. Like, make sure that it's Brittany.
And I had no idea. I just assumed, different spellings for same pronunciation. So I'm going to say Brittany because that's how you actually say it. And I always want to make sure that I'm like pronouncing everyone's name correctly because names are important. So congratulations on all the success, of your book. And I must say, I love that your nails are matching the book cover. I love it. It actually reminds me of the story that Minda Hart told in her book about how I was always worried about like getting nails that were too bright. Mm-hmm. And Minda told the story of how someone she worked for had said, you people love your bright colors when it came to nails. And I love the idea of like standing in, wearing the colors we want to wear. And I love that because I love bright colors as well. And I love that your nails are matching your book. So thank you so much for having me on here.
Yes, well, I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. We're talking about this topic that I really dive into in chapter 2. The actual title of chapter 2 is Grief When No One Died. And so really diving into the ways that grief can show up as a result of trauma in the workplace, as a result of racial trauma in the workplace, and really sharing my experience of like the first time I really recognized that I was grieving and no one had died. And so I'm like, what is going on with me? What is happening? And just trying to help to give particularly Black women language for how grief shows up in the workplace. And so, but I guess I want to just start with kind of this first question of, or this affirmation, even that Brittany was sharing about, I am not my work.
Oh my gosh. That like hit different for me. And I'm sure for you, because, you know, you have this like this whole program of career thrivers. And so many of us are workaholics. And I found that I derive a lot of my self-value from my productivity. And I think that it was ramped up during COVID, where I felt like I can't just be sitting here. I have to be doing something. And I think the household I was raised in, my dad, you know, like we couldn't just sit and just be still. And I think that there's something really profound about the stillness that I found myself, or I find myself running from. And a lot of times we need that stillness, and in the stillness comes like the clarity. And so I think for me, when you speak about this, when you speak about the idea of grief, I think part of it is like letting go of parts of yourself that no longer serve you. And for me, I had to let go of the idea that like who I am and my accolades and my achievements make me who I am. I think those things are nice, but I realized I was putting too much of my self-worth in those things. I know that you've experienced a lot of that as well. How do you find how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I'll say for me, and I love on the podcast, you're like, welcome, this is Janice.
Yeah,
I'm like, so Janice, if we really gonna have this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say the first time that I recognized it was when I was having this tension after coming back to work after my mom died, and really questioning like, Brittany, why do you feel like you have to be like physically present to show that you are a valuable asset to this team? And so it was a lot of like this mindset around, well, what I produce makes me valuable, and recognizing that at the time I was definitely like so off center in terms of like the differences between worth versus value. Like my existence makes me worthy. I'm valued by way of my skill set and my capabilities, but I don't need to get the two confused. And so that was probably one of the first instances for me. And then I'll tell you, I guess 3 years later, after I left corporate, feeling like, okay, I got it together. Like, I'm good. I'm taking this leap of faith. I'm doing this entrepreneurship thing. The identity piece reared its head again, because I could no longer say, I could lean in before and say, I'm Brittany. Oh, what do you do? It's a question that most people ask, and, all I had to share was my company, oh, I work at Pfizer, and I didn't really have to say anything else. It was like the way people received me was different. And I didn't recognize that there was a part of that I leaned into. So now as a business owner, it's like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, and people are kind of like, oh,
yeah, they got like stigma, like, oh, you're an entrepreneur. Okay. And I remember you talking about this through your posts on Instagram, and I'd love to like follow your journey and see, the transition that you had to make from like working in corporate to now sort of being this new person. So I think that at so many points in our life, we're probably having those moments of grief where we have to let go of like who we are or who we were. And I do think that sometimes for me, there is like a grieving process involved where I'm like, I know that I have to evolve, but I'm still like clinging on to certain parts of my past or the ways that I used to think, where I'm like, yeah, I know I have to let those things sort of go. And it's a process, and I have to give myself grace and help myself understand that I'm always learning and growing, and it's always going to be an evolution process. Where I shared with Brittany on the LinkedIn Live earlier today that like, I think what's really beautiful is being able to let go of this idea of who you thought you were. And I think sometimes like we're so stuck on, this is the hill that I'm going to die on. This is who I am, but we're not willing to let go of the idea of who we were. And that's okay. It's okay to have crafted your identity around who you thought you were, and then realizing at some point that that no longer serves you and you have to like sort of evolve. But I think sometimes because of public perceptions or because of whatever, we don't want to let that go, and we like are staying in this idea of who people think we are because we think it serves us better, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't. And I can remember feeling that like shrinking, you know,
Mhm.
that like if I stay here in this current context, you know, I can't fully be all of who I know that I am. So it was
Mhm.
that tension of like, okay, it is time to make a decision about, you know, transitioning to a space that better serves you. I'm curious about your perspective on the role that race plays in this, because I know that you do anti-racism work, and there's just, you know, I find in coaching predominantly Black women who are still in corporate, who may have some entrepreneurial pursuits around, you know, personal branding and visibility and showing up, that there still sometimes is this tension that we are, you know, we think that we are more worthy by what we're able to produce in the workplace. Talk a little bit about your perspective on the role that race plays in this work and worth conversation.
I think for Black women, it's intensified. Last year, maybe the year before that, I was asked to like give a quote on this research study that SurveyMonkey did, where they looked at sleep, and I was like, oh my God, I love sleep. I'm big on sleep. I try to track my sleep because for me, I know I perform at optimal levels when I've gotten a good amount of sleep. So they were like, oh, could you comment on this study? And I was like, sure. And the study basically said like white people are getting more sleep on average. I think white people in general and on average get about 7 hours of sleep, and Black people and other people of color that they surveyed get about 5 to 6 hours of sleep on average. And they wanted me to comment on or give my predictions on why. And I said, like, for me, as a Black woman, I know that I'm so deeply entrenched in like grind culture where I see people that I admire. I see someone like you. I see someone like Angelina. I see someone, you know, there's so many people like Minda who are doing all of these amazing things. And I'm not a competitive person, and I've never been competitive. So when I see other Black women shining, it actually inspires me and pushes me. And I'm like, wow, you know, I want to do this as well. But I feel that pressure of just maybe my upbringing and my parents in the back of my head's like saying, I need to push myself. I need to do more. And I think watching my mom push herself to an unhealthy, like if we're being honest, to an unhealthy level, I internalized that and felt like that's what I'm supposed to do. And I think like I'm traditional in the sense of like, I think in the partnership that I'm in, I feel like as a woman, I'm supposed to cook and I'm supposed to clean and I'm supposed to tend to the house, but I'm also doing that while teaching full time and trying to run a business full time. And we don't have any kids yet. So I'm like, I can't even imagine how do people do this? Like, so I feel like there's this pressure on so many of us Black women where we feel like, and the truth is we're not even given the room to like fail. And so I feel like this constant pressure of like, I don't have the space and the ability to fail, which is not healthy. I'm working through those feelings, because I know that that's not, everyone makes mistakes and everyone fails, and I have to sort of embrace that. But I think that the added pressure of race makes us feel like everything has to be, we have to be 10 times as good to be, you know, so all of these factors, but I'm trying to let go of that because that's not healthy. And I think that I can't pour into other people and I can't pour into organizations if I'm just like exhausted and I'm overwhelmed. So I try to like lean into, I mentioned earlier today in the LinkedIn Live, like how Shonda Rhimes had this book, Year of Yes, and I had to have a year of no, where I was just like, I can't be saying yes to everything. So for me, liberation for me as a Black woman has meant boundaries, setting boundaries, because I'm like a recovering people pleaser where I felt like I had to do all these things. And if I didn't, people wouldn't like me. And I had to let go of that idea of like I'm the people pleaser. For me, it was like, I'm dependable. I know that if someone asked me to do something and I agree to it, I'm going to do it no matter what. And I was agreeing to do everything and I was feeling like exhausted. So I think for me, I'm still learning that it's okay to, like, if I don't have the capacity for something, I don't have the capacity for something, and that's okay. And like leaning into that more than what I had been doing in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You mentioned the B word, boundaries, and it is so critical for self-care and how we show up. So yeah, I love that you shared that. You mentioned your upbringing, and I'm curious about kind of the role, and if you'll share a little bit about your background, especially coming from a family of immigrants and having a unique perspective on identity and race. Talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you and how it showed up in terms of your career in the workplace.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I see as far as the similarity between Black immigrant households and Black American households is this emphasis on work. Like, is this like you have to work hard? And so I think my parents, who immigrated here from Cameroon, which is a country in West Central Africa, they came here like with this mindset of like, you have to work hard, and you have to just keep your head down and do whatever it is you're asked to do, and life will be good. And it was confusing to me because I was like, okay, well, my parents are working hard. You know, my mom, for the most of our upbringing, she didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad was an educator. And then when we were teenagers, my mom got into teaching as well. So both of my parents are educators. But I was like, they're working so hard. My mom was teaching in Atlanta. And so she was working, she would wake up at 4 a.m. to start driving at like 5:30 to beat the traffic to get to class on time. And then she would get home at 6 or 7 o'clock. She was exhausted. And I'm like, that's not a healthy way to live. And you're doing everything you taught us to do. You're working hard. My mom later on in life went and got her bachelor's and her master's and a certificate, or specialist, which I think is like somewhere between a master's and master's and a PhD. So she's like big on, education. And I'm like, but you taught us to do all these things, work hard, keep our head down, and that's what's going to save us. And yet you are experiencing racism and racial trauma. And for my mom specifically, she experienced like being a Black teacher in environments where there were white administrators, and she was being told by administrators and pressured by administrators to change grades of students, where there was all Black school she was teaching at, and the white administrators were saying, well, we really need you to give these honor students a better grade in your course because whatever, so it was like the white administrators looking out for the white students. And my mom was of the mindset of, she was like, my value system doesn't align with this. So she has quit multiple jobs because she's like, I'm not doing that. That's not in my moral compass. And I just look at her and I'm like, that is so amazing to me, because it's so easy to just say, you know what, I'm going to change the grade and keep my job. But my mom was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I think seeing my mom doing that really, really impacted me and the way that I feel now, and how I'm like, I think it's so important for us as Black people and as people of color in general to stand in our power. And I think that we have so much power as Black people, we sometimes like take it for granted. And we have to be willing to say, I'm not going to put up with this. You're not going to mistreat me. You're not going to allow my genius and my amazingness to sort of just like be taken for granted. And I think that the more we stand in our power and we feel comfortable doing that, the better. And I know it's difficult. It sounds so easy to just say, oh, quit if it's a job and an environment that's not serving you. And it's been challenging for my mom. And she never went back into the classroom. She had multiple situations like that. And at some point a few years ago, she actually got injured. They were playing dodgeball in the school and she fell. She injured her shoulder. So she wasn't able to like write on the board anymore. And she decided to leave and kind of like go into an early retirement. But that was profound to me. She could have just And people around me had said, why doesn't she just go back and start working? That's like, she's able to, she's not of retirement age. Why not? And I was like, no, there's something really powerful about saying, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be like a corporate mule, or I'm not going to like allow you to mistreat me just so I can have a paycheck. And that's something so beautiful to me. And I think that that's so inspiring. And I tell her how inspiring that is. But like, I think the combination of seeing her and then seeing my dad was always working, always working, always working. I've internalized some of that. And my brother had told me recently that he feels like immigrant children or first generation children feel this like intense pressure to like always work. Because there's like, things we heard from our parents is like, oh, I sacrificed all of these things to come here and give you a better life. So you don't want to feel like your parents' sacrifice was in vain. So I feel this pressure a lot. And I have to sort of recognize that and unlearn that, because I'm like, it's okay to like not be productive sometimes. It's okay to like watch Netflix. And I feel guilty when I'm doing those things because I just feel like I should be doing something more productive. And even in my mind, I'm like, I don't have kids right now. I should be like more productive, because my friends with children tell me, well, when you have kids, you're not going to be able to write these 2 books and do this and do that, because life with children is a lot. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I'm unlearning. And I'm hoping that more folks in our generation are starting to unlearn the things that we were taught and told from our parents and our great grandparents about like work and how we have to work ourselves into the ground. And I just don't think that that's healthy.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I love that you mentioned, I was kind of sitting here thinking about, when things happen at certain crossroads, like how you were mentioning with your mom, sometimes the default answer can be just to throw yourself into work and just kind of work, through that emotional trauma. I'm curious, in your career, was there ever a moment where you experienced that, or where you experienced some type of feeling of grief or just emotional trauma connected to who you are in the workplace?
All the time. I used to work in banking. So when I was in college, I worked as a bank teller, and I really enjoyed it because I'm extroverted. So I really love meeting people, and the customers were amazing. And it was like a high energy job. You meet a bunch of new people, but it was like the management always made me feel less than. And I think that's what made me get into organizational development and psychology, is because I was like, this is not sustainable. And imagine, like, I was, a college student. So I was like, I know at some point I'm going to leave this industry. This is like a short-term thing. But what about all of these folks who are putting food on the table for their families? They're working these jobs and they're enduring this emotional abuse from leadership and from management. I think the final straw for me, when I knew I needed to leave this industry, was I was actually robbed as a bank teller. There was someone who, there was someone who came in and handed me a note that said, I have a gun, so you need to like put all the money in your drawer in my bag. And I didn't know if this person actually had a gun or not. And then I moved to Louisiana. My parents were there at the time I moved. And then I had to come back to testify against this person. And it was like super intense. And I was like, this is a lot for like the minimum wage that I was getting and for the emotional abuse that I was enduring as a teller. And the tellers are like the bread and butter of the organization. So I think like I've had so many roles, and when I moved to New York, I was actually tour guiding. So when people could take these tour buses, and I was like the tour guide. So I would show them different parts of New York, and I loved that job. It was, again, so amazing. I get to meet new people, but my manager was so like toxic, and she had been there for so long. She'd been there for over 20 years, and it was just such a horrible type of like thing. And I think that in every workplace, there is those levels of toxicity. Some it's more than others. So I think that in every workplace, there is a level of that, but I really am trying to lean into like not staying in those types of environments where in academia, it can definitely be like that. I've worked in spaces like that in academia where it felt like it feels very white and very like othering to me as a young Black professor. And I think that's been challenging sometimes for me, asserting myself as an authority where people look at me. And what frustrates me most is like students that call me by my first name, because when I was in school, I never called any professor by their first name. Like, hey, Brittany, how are you? Like, that's not like the sort of dynamic that I had. I felt like it was a sign of respect to call them professor or to call them doctor, but a lot of students would call me by my first name. And that was like really off-putting to me. And, there's, of course, in academia, there's always things where you feel like, your age might work against you and people looking at me, and I'm older than what I look. So students will see me and be like, oh, where's the professor? I'm like, oh, it's me. And they're like, oh, okay. Where it's kind of like this sort of, but I think that like what's really kept me grounded in all of these situations is like knowing that, or believing in myself enough to feel like if this is not an environment that serves me anymore, I know that I will find another environment that serves me or create that environment. And I think with starting my business, for me, that was like creating an environment where I don't have to sort of rely on someone for a paycheck, so to speak. I'm still working with businesses and business leaders, but it's a different dynamic when, as as an entrepreneur, it's a completely different sort of dynamic. There's a level of freedom. I can say things that I was probably more nervous to say in the past. I'm still a little like, I pull back because I'm still in academia. But I think that if there's ever a moment where I'm not in academia anymore and I'm fully like focused on my business, will feel even more free to say and do things. But there's like that level of freedom that I'm sure you felt when you left Pfizer and started entrepreneurship full time. I'm sure you felt like so much freedom, right?
Oh yes, definitely. Definitely. That's at the top of the list of benefits. And certainly too, especially in this space, being able to advocate for Black professionals from an external perspective, even that level of freedom to say the things that they wish they could say or may feel, uncomfortable or unsafe to be able to say, to bring that perspective into the room is also freeing as well. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I love how Dominique says, changing the narrative and normalizing boundaries on what success looks like. That doesn't include compromising our well-being to get there. I think that's so important. And like reprioritizing in the work that I do, I've really tried to reprioritize Black people, because I'm like, the way that I was doing the work years prior has been like, what do white people want? How do I make white people feel comfortable? How do I teach white people about racism? But in asking myself those questions, I wasn't prioritizing and amplifying the most marginalized people. So I've tried to reshift my work and ask myself, who are the most marginalized and how do I help them? And how do we center them in the conversation? And so I think that sort of reprioritization has helped me to just feel like I'm making more of an impact than just coming in, educating people on racism and then leaving.
And that was the part that before the last thing I'll say, you and Brittany hit on this today, and I've got to finish listening to it. And I'll share the link in terms of the LinkedIn Live that we keep referencing. But I have felt that this week, just this tension of like, I know that I'm working hard, but am I really making a difference? Like, are y'all really getting this? Or is this just because shareholders are asking now, what are you doing with regards to DEI? So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes. So like, I think it's just asking myself what makes me feel joy? What makes me feel liberated? And I have to actually sit and think and ask myself. And I'm like, I feel joy when I'm reading a book. I feel joy when I'm like taking a warm shower and just like just sighing, and thinking about the events of the day. I feel liberated when I'm listening to a podcast that I really resonate with, or when I'm listening to a audiobook that I really resonate with. So how do I do more of the things that I love? And I was on a call with someone today and he was telling me he read this book, and I was like, how do you find time to read? Because for me, I just wish I had more time to read, which I also need an assistant I'm working on, because I feel like I have so much on my plate. But he was like, you just have to make time for it. And I was like, that's true. I need to do that. And he's like, do a little reading every morning. And I was like, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start doing more of what brings me joy, because I think there's so much pressure when you're younger, when you're childless, people expect a lot from you. And I have folks that I know, elders, that are like, what are you tired for? You're still young. Like, you don't have a reason to be. And I think I've internalized that a little bit, where I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't have kids. I'm not middle-aged yet. So do I have a reason to be tired? But then I'm like, yes, I do. You could still be exhausted and work yourself into the ground. It's not just having kids and caring for kids that can make you feel exhausted. So I had to also like learn that myself.
So good. And I see Dominique, who is a wonderful mama force. I was tired before kids.
Yes. Yes. I mean, like, that is the truth. So I've heard that so much from like I have some Haitian aunties that I'm close with, and they're like, tired? What are you tired for? You don't have any kids, you're young. And I'm like, and I told my mom that, and my mom was just like, you could still be tired, and not like, a person doesn't like, you have to remove this idea that only having kids means you're worthy of rest and a break. And she's like, no, there's like, so I've also tried to learn that as well. And that's a whole nother discussion of like, women, the expectation for women is just like, you're not valuable unless we're celebrating you getting married or celebrating you having kids. We can't celebrate these other things that make you and your journey interesting. It's all about those sorts of things. And I think there's so much focus on that. And those things are amazing and beautiful and good, but people can have value outside of those things.
Absolutely. And I see Leah in the comments, we can find and create a good environment for ourselves. So true. Well, I know we are at time with you, so I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for sharing on this journey, for saying yes to joining the Thrive Through It virtual book tour. And I'm excited.
Congratulations on all the success of your book, on being a bestseller, and just like all the success and all of the amazing things that are coming your way. It's amazing to watch your journey from afar or from social media, but I'm just so happy for you and so proud for you. And just like, it was amazing to virtually meet you. And I hope that the attendees, I hope you all found this conversation to be nourishing and good and interesting. I'm always open to connecting with other folks. So if anyone wants to connect,
where we can connect with you.
Yeah, I'm not good with checking my DMs on Instagram, but I'm good with connecting on Instagram. But I would say I'm on LinkedIn more. So on LinkedIn, my name is Janice Gassam Asare. You can find me on Instagram by searching the same. And I'm also connected with Brittany. So you'll be able to find me on either platform.
Perfect. And we'll definitely make sure that all of her links are shared. Thank you again so much for being here. We're going to wrap up our stop with just some Q&A and some conversation from chapter 2. But thanks again for stopping by tonight.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Awesome. Well, that was fantastic. Love that conversation, and definitely want to continue it here with you all. And so I was just going to share just a couple of things from chapter 2. I had my whiteboard up and I was just thinking, I wish I would have left it behind me. But if you do not have your copy of Thrive Through It, or if you do have your copy of Thrive Through It, I'm just going to share a couple of things. We are on stop 2 of the resilience roadmap, which is about identifying the loss. And I think one of the things that Janice was just sharing is about creating that space for rest. And I think one of the reasons why that's so important is that it gives us time to really identify where that point of tension is with emotions that we may be feeling that may be similar to grief. And so one of the things that I talk about in this section, so I took the title for today directly from this section in the book, What You Do Isn't Who You Are, or Is It? Because much like what we were talking about, it can be so easy, and I find the slope to be very slippery, of seeing who we are and how we show up in the world through the lens of our work. And let me know in the chat if that's just me, or if you have experienced that before, where if something changes in your life professionally, you start to question who you are and what's unique about you and what you have to bring. I can definitely say as I shared a little bit about just my journey, but also working with other women, especially when sometimes we face things like job loss, or we're in the midst of a job search, and we're going after an opportunity and we don't get the job. And maybe we are, having repeat rejection from a professional advancement standpoint. We have those moments. Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. I see you, Andrea, and I see Leah as well, experiencing that right now. And certainly, too, I want to let you all know on Zoom, there is a raised hand feature. And so this time is open. It's as we wrap up here. So if you would like to join me on screen in conversation, just use that raised hand feature. Or if you just have a question or want to add to the conversation via audio and not come on camera, there's an option there too. I think you click on participants, and there are 3 little dots. You click on that, and then you can use the raise hand feature, and I can bring you off of mute. So just a heads up there. But yes, so thank you for sharing that again, Andrea, or maybe Andrea. You can let me know the pronunciation on that. But we can definitely relate to that in terms of being in that space of, questioning who we really are and what we truly bring when other people maybe don't see our value. And one of the things that I talk about in chapter 2, and that I also find is really important when we're in that space of career grief that's associated with the loss of an opportunity, with the rejection of an opportunity that we wanted, or perhaps even, things like microaggressions in the workplace. I find that it is important to recenter on who we really are, right? And one of the ways that I find most helpful to do that, outside of just devotion time and spending time with God in terms of my faith practice, is through affirmation, right? So utilizing affirmations. And if you're not familiar with affirmations, they are, positive sayings, and you can create your own. Like literally, I have 2 on my desk right here. I have a couple of decks, but I have 2 right here, right? So positive sayings that you repeat, right, about who you are and how you show up in the world. And for me, I find that affirmations around identity are more powerful for me than affirmations around maybe like, influence or what I want to achieve, right? So for example, I love this one. I may have shared this with you during the last stop, but it says, I am creating conditions for growth with ease, grace, blessing, and provision. And you know what? This is divine. Let's talk about this for a second too, because I think this dovetails so nicely with our conversation. I had a chance to sit in on a conversation with a senior leader at Essence Magazine a couple of Fridays ago, and she was talking about her journey of how she has navigated through corporate America, and how she even before work talked about how she has grown up, and talked about how she has gotten to her current role at Essence. And if you're not familiar with Carolyn Wanga, she's the Chief Executive Officer of Essence. Encourage you to look her up for sure. But she was talking about in the session, we were on a Zoom call, and she was sharing with a group of women. And I'm going to read to you exactly what I wrote down from her talk. So another post-it note. But here's what she said. And like, this dropped so heavy on me. And I think it will help all of us in this conversation about work and worth. She said, we destroy ourselves to prove things. We destroy ourselves to prove things, and don't recognize that it's supposed to click fast. It's supposed to be easy. When we are operating in alignment with our purpose, it is supposed to be easy. And the reason why that resonated with me so much is I think so much of the messaging, particularly around entrepreneurship, is the opposite, right? We hear things like, and I think, and let me not just say, because this isn't just for entrepreneurs, I think this also resonates for anyone who's ambitious and has aspirations to advance in their career. We spend so much time talking about how hard it is to get to do things or to achieve. And I know that there is an element of hard work that is consistent, that is necessary, right? That, faith without works is dead. Like, that principle is important. We have to believe. And then as a result of what we believe, we start to move in the direction of our belief through what we are doing and building. So I think that that is true. But I also have experienced, and I know, and I resonate so much with, it is supposed to be easy. There is supposed to be a level of ease and flow and seamlessness that comes through me operating in purpose, right? And I think, again, the purpose word is one that we just like fly all over and just use any kind of way. But what I mean when I say that is, when we are operating in alignment with who we are, right? With who we divinely are, and also in alignment with the gifts that we've been given to show up in the world in an expansive way. And so I believe when you're in that flow, when you make decisions in alignment with that place of identity, and that's really what it is a conversation around. It's less about like, I'm doing all of this stuff that then qualifies me for this spot, right? Or this, level of success. But it could be quite the opposite. And so that for me, right? And so for me, an affirmation of continually thinking about Brittany today, right? On Thursday, April the 22nd, how are you waking up and creating conditions for ease, creating conditions for grace, creating conditions for blessing, creating conditions for provision, and all of that being within my scope, my realm of control of being able to say, you know what? That's not a condition for ease right there. I don't know if I need to say yes to that. And I was talking to a mentor of mine before I hopped on here. And I was telling him about this client that I'm like, I don't have any ease around. Like, I'm really concerned about, am I setting myself up with conditions for ease in terms of the work that I do? So I share that to say, I think regardless of the kind of work that you do, asking yourself that question and affirming that over yourself, that I am creating conditions for ease, for grace, for blessing, and for provision in my life today, right? And that being a daily affirmation that then I think helps us to realign where work fits in our life. I am not my work. I do great work, fantastic work, and I love the work that I have chosen to do, but I am not my work, right? And so I think the last thing I'll say on that as it relates to purpose, I think that's also why sometimes too we get the purpose conversation confused, and we think that it is about a career title or level of promotion or success, and it's really not. Like, you embody purpose. Purpose is who you are. It's about your existence, and so you bring your purpose to every space that you're in, to every title that you rent, right? As Tashonda Duckett would say, or every organization that you decide to partner with as a business owner, whatever it looks like for you in terms of the scope of your work. Purpose is not a destination. It is divine DNA. Like, I embody purpose and I bring that to where I am. And so I think that's so important when we start to think about things that we experience as a result of our career and not internalizing it to take a toll on who we are, how we see ourselves. Right. So we talked a little bit about last week, some of the different types of career grief. And I see the chat blinking here. Okay, love that. Okay, y'all were tracking with me. Sometimes I'm like, am I the only one that is flowing with this? But okay, so y'all were tracking along. Hey Taylor, hey Leah, hey Ashley. All right, thank y'all for sharing. We destroy ourselves when it's supposed to be easy. That hits hard. Yeah, listen, that hit me hard. I was like, oh wait, what did she say? Let me write that down real quick. But I think that's so true. That's so true. And that, just that picture of destroying ourselves. And if you have thrived through it, I talk about it in the book. Like, I literally can remember the moment that I looked up from my desk. It was almost 9 o'clock at night. I had gotten to work just before 8, and I was still there looking at a to-do list of stuff. I'm like, this cannot be my life. Like continuously, it's like this is not conditions for ease. And so as Janice was saying so eloquently, owning our power, right? And taking that power back and saying, you know what, I get to choose how I show up in the world, and particularly as women, right? And I know, we have a few smart men on here tonight, but specifically for women, how are you owning that power to say, I get to choose? Like, I'm not just, waiting on some, great opportunity that yes, I'll be grateful for, but that I feel like is beyond, who I am and the value that I'm going to bring to the role. It's like, no, I get to choose how I want to show up. And if I have outgrown an environment, or I'm in an environment where I have to shrink and not be all of who I'm called to be, perhaps it's time for a transition. So Andrea says, we're here. That how are you creating conditions for ease just knocked us all down. Okay. Listen, it's right here on my desk because I'm like, okay, before I get going today, I am creating conditions for growth, for blessing, for provision and ease. That's what I'm doing today. So this inbox, this, and this is the last thing I'll say on this. And any questions y'all have, let me know in the chat, because we are wrapping up and maybe able to give you all some minutes back today. But that even, I think that mindset, that mantra, that affirmation also helps us with decisions that we need to make that may be challenging, right? So I'm in a space right now of making some decisions about growing our team for career thrivers. And it's like, okay, let's talk about, Brittany, like, yes, hiring and onboarding and training is challenging. It's hard. It's difficult. The hiring part is the easy part. All the other stuff, the onboarding, the training, and the culture building with people can be challenging, but that cost is worth it because it helps you create conditions for ease. And so again, that one definitely has helped me for sure. Okay, so I see in the chat, will you share that affirmation with us? Yes, absolutely. I will share that affirmation again. And if someone would type it into the chat, and then however you want to use it, if you want to type it and make you a little Canva graphic reminder, maybe I'll do that and I'll send that out tonight. But the affirmation is, I am creating conditions for growth with ease, grace, blessing, and provision. That is the affirmation. All right. So any last questions? Thank you all again so much for joining. And I will let you all know that I had to do some things with the link, and I want to make sure too, you all should have gotten a link or been able to link to our partner, one of our partners for the book tour as well. So just want to definitely make sure to shout them out as well before we wrap up. But there's a link in the chat that I will repost again so you can get the replay. Feel free to share that. And then also I'll make sure that the links to connect with Janice are there as well as the replay of the LinkedIn Live we were referencing. I mean, I promise you, the conversation that she had today with another Brittany on LinkedIn mirrored the conversation today. They talked for a little bit longer, but it was exactly about this conversation of work and worth and identity. And they went even deeper in terms of some of the historical aspects as to why sometimes, particularly Black men and women, over index on work. And she hinted at it a little bit, but they definitely talked about just this systemic anti-Blackness sentiment that Black people are used for tools for production, right? When you think about slavery and how sometimes we still embody that mindset that what we produce, that the production is more invaluable than the producer, right? And so, that becomes such a deep perspective shift that we don't, even us, right, internalize that perspective that what we produce is more valuable than the person that is doing the producing. Thank you, Taylor, for putting that in the chat. Love it. Okay. Yep. Assimilation is definitely real. So a couple things about our upcoming stops I wanted to share with you before we wrap up here. One, we have a conversation next week with Lauren Carson. I hope you join us for that. We're going to be talking about survival mode. She does a lot of work in the mental health space. And so we're going to be talking about like our body's neurological response to fear. And if you aren't familiar with the terminology of survival mode, you likely are familiar with fight, flight, or freeze. And so it's a physiological response that we have that starts in our brain, that when our body senses fear. And oftentimes we'll find that we are operating from that place longer than perhaps we should be. So we're going to be talking about that next Thursday, same time, same place, same link. And then in May, I'm excited to share with you all. So we have our dates for May 13th, May 20th, and then May 22nd is going to be live in person. And I'm so excited. So we are working on getting the communication out for that. But we're going to be doing a book signing and brunch with Brittany. I'm thrilled. I cannot wait. It's on a Sunday. So just know that that date won't be a Thursday, but it'll be Sunday, May the 23rd from 3 to 5 p.m. So just stay tuned for that. And the topic is going to be, yes, I've changed, reinventing the now you. And there'll be a bonus personal branding session to help you reinvent. So if you're in that space of like, listen, I'm owning my power. I'm creating conditions for ease, which means I am ready to make a transition. And you are wanting to take your personal brand to the next level to help you attract aligned opportunities, then you do not want to miss that session in May. If you have registered via Eventbrite, whether you were able to grab one of the free tickets, or if you have purchased your ticket, that does cover you for the virtual experience through the end of June. So just wanted to clarify that. And then there are some partnership options. So if you are a business owner and you would like to partner as it relates to the book tour, or if you know someone who may want to partner on the book tour as well, then there are options there for that. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. New IMC is a full service marketing and communications firm based in Nashville. So they are one of our partners, led by Dr. Contrice Tharp. So thank you all so much for partnering to make this happen, to allow us to be able to extend some tickets and also some books, because if you go through Eventbrite, your registration does come with a signed copy of Thrive Through It. So make sure to head on over to Eventbrite if you have not registered so you can access that. All right, well, that is it for stop 2. Yay! Latoya, yes, you can register. Let me drop the link here. I'll drop the link in the chat. And then, yes, if you have not registered through Eventbrite, so let me just specify that as well. You perhaps could have registered through Zoom, but that was a more direct registration, a comped registration. So if you have not registered through Eventbrite, through one of the either the all access pass or the VIP, which does give you access to the personal branding workshop, then you'll just want to make sure to do that. And so I will put that link in the chat so you can be sure to purchase your ticket. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up here for tonight? Thank you all so much for being here. Feel free to share this with a friend. Next Thursday is going to be a great conversation. Oh, thank you, Dominique. Look at Dominique on it while I'm over here searching for the link. Thank you so much. All right. You all have an amazing evening. I was going to say schedule in. Make time for some self-care. Like every day, but especially this week, there has been a lot happening this week. And so give yourself the grace and the pause and the stop to say, you know what, I'm not taking anything else in until I pour in, right, to me and the things that I need that bring me joy. I'm trying to be as intentional as I can this week around that with everything that is taking place. So thank you all again for joining tonight. Look forward to seeing you next week. And until then, we will talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye.